Some new president walks in there, and about 5 or 6 days after he's there, there'll be somebody on the staff will come up to him and say, whisper in his ear, Mr. President, if you look up there on Mount Rushmore, if you look closely, you'll see there's room for one more face. And almost every president said, I'd like to be up on Mount Rushmore. Now I've looked at that. You can't get up on Mount Rushmore. You can't do it. You might be able to have one profile up there, but it'd be very small. But they all get that. They all want to be Mount Rushmoreans. And that is a good thing, as long as they're for the group. As long as they want to do this for the country. It's a good thing. Now that's quality one, and I think we just put that on the side. The other quality, I always thought, I grew up in an academic family. My dad taught. Two of my older brothers taught. I'm now in university. My nephew is here tonight, Mark Gergen, who's here on the law school faculty, professor here in the law school family. My son is going to be teaching a little bit. I mean, it's just sort of in the family. People teach. I don't know. We can't make a living doing anything else. But we sort of, you know, it's just in the family. So but coming from a family like that, I always thought that this, you know, what would really distinguish somebody as a leader was how smart they were. So if you found the smartest person, you would find the best leader of any group. And what I've learned in life is that's not true. What I've learned is that you've got to be smart enough. You've got to know your stuff. You've got to have a curious mind. You've got to want to understand. But that in and of itself is not enough to distinguish you. Let me talk to you about two presidents who would not want to be found in the same sentence with each other, but had some parallels. One was the first president I ever worked for was Richard Nixon, and the other was the last president I worked for was Bill Clinton. There were some very rough parallels between them in this fundamental sense. Richard Nixon was the most complex man I've ever met in public life. And when I first started working for him, I was just a kid. I was in my late 20s. And what I saw in Richard Nixon was the bright side in the beginning. He was the best strategist I've ever seen in public life. He was someone who could figuratively go up on a mountaintop and look out 20 years into the future and figure out how history was likely to unfold, and then try to sit and figure out how do we bend history. How do we bend history to favor America's national security interests? And I have spent time trying to figure out, how do you ever learn how to do that? And part of it was, I guess part of it was, and we have a lesson with it with that, but the other part was, he really worked at it. He really worked at trying to understand the forces that were moving society and where they were going. He did that in part by traveling. He traveled incessantly. He went to almost every country. He wanted to understand how they saw the world. And I urge you, as you go through college and before you start the next serious stage of your life, to spend serious time overseas, to learn to see America through a different lens, to realize that we can be very myopic, and that other people see the world in very different ways than we do. And you need to understand that and appreciate them for their values and their culture. You know, Thomas Jefferson once said that nobody could learn to speak and read and write English well until they learned French, because only by knowing French could you learn English. When you have a chance sometime, go to Independence, Missouri. You look at the LBJ Library here, and then go look at the Truman Library in Independence, Missouri. It's a wonderful library. It's small, it's humble, and it captures Harry Truman so well. And you can actually look at the letters he wrote, look at the books he read when he was young, and how his mother instructed him, and the great heroes that really affected his leadership. But Harry Truman was the only president of the 20th century. The only American president of the 20th century didn't go to college. He didn't go to college because his family was too poor. When he graduated from high school, they didn't have the money to send him to school. So he wound up going back to the family farm. He was behind a mule and a plow for 7 years. But during that time, Harry Truman read, and he became a self-educated man. And as a result, when he got to the White House, he was actually one of the best educated people we've ever had in the presidency, even though he'd never gone to college. Now, I picked up a speech he gave to some high school students in Independence, and here's what he told those high school kids. He said, "Not every reader is a leader, but every leader is a reader." I believe that. I believe that if you really have to, if you want to understand the world, you've got to have the discipline to read and work at it. And so you have to develop your mind. And Nixon had all that. And that was the bright side, but Nixon also had, which I did not understand at first, but it soon became apparent, he also had a very dark side. And it was, there's a lot of psychology today. It comes out of Carl Jung about people having both bright sides. We all have a dark side. All of us have those darker impulses. But the challenge in life is whether you can sort of master your impulses, whether you can become master of yourself, whether you can navigate through your weaknesses, whether you can keep them under control. And Nixon had not learned to do that. And Nixon had demons inside him that he had never learned to control. And they would come out. Nixon thought if you weren't his friend, you must be his enemy. He didn't see that there were a lot of people just floating around didn't care about you one way or the other. He just assumed if you weren't his friend, you must be his enemy. And the way he thought, he believed in the life, politics was the life of the jungle. It isn't, in fact. It's a much nobler undertaking than that, in fact. But that's what he thought. And so his whole thing was, you got to get them. In the jungle, every animal has, the way of the jungle is you have to eat them before they eat you. Superb tactician, and he's a great synthesizer. He's not an original mind, but he has a capacity to bring in tons and tons of information, synthesize it, get the best out of it, and then from that to shape interesting ideas on public policy and public policies himself. And he had, I can just tell you, on many an occasion, and others had the same experience I did, you'd walk in the Oval Office, there'd be 3 people in there, be talking to the president, you'd get into an animated conversation about something that was happening down in Florida, some storm about to hit Florida, he'd be back and forth with you, and then while you were talking, he was listening, he would also be filling out a New York Times crossword puzzle. So you'd be saying something about, sir, I think that this storm may be coming up on the west side, I'm not sure, it may hit around Tampa. He'd look up and say, who was that character in the second act of Aida? Now, I found that daunting. I have to go off in a dark corner to work on the New York Times crossword puzzle. This guy's clicking it off, so I found it daunting. Actually, I found it insulting. But there he was. He had that kind of mind. If you are familiar with IT, there used to be something called parallel processing. And that's what Clinton could do. He did parallel processing. He could process information to an astonishing degree. And it made his policies much, much better. He was really smart. Really smart. And even today, he remains the best speaker in public life today. He's compelling public speaker. And he had something else in the way he did it. He had what I call 360-degree leadership. And that is that when he was trying to understand a problem, he just didn't talk to people who thought like he did. He didn't talk to people who were just the allies of his in the Democratic Party. He didn't talk just to the labor union or to the activist group in the environmental field or whatever it may be. He practiced 360-degree leadership, and that is he wanted to understand the views and perspective of everybody around him all the way around the circle. And he paid a fearful price for it, too much of a price. But we all know that just as Richard Nixon could not control the demons in his character, Bill Clinton, when he was president, had not yet learned to heal the cracks in his character. And he paid a big price for it. So what does all that tell you? It tells you that in addition to ambition, it's really important to be smart, to know your stuff, be curious, to try to understand the world. In other words, to really know your stuff, to be professional. But there is that third element that's also crucial, and that's character. I cannot emphasize enough the importance of including that and having character wound into this equation as part of your leadership.